Here we are on YouTube. Brian, how are you today?
Good, Nathan. How are you today?
I'm great. Look at this.
Welp, there's a mug.
Welp.
So how can people get a Welp mug?
Well,
yeah, it's probably backwards for some people. Yeah, but how do we get a Welp mug?
You can go to the merch store where you can get merch like this pillow back here. Check it out. Oh,
that's awesome.
Or you can get t-shirts. You can get lots of stuff actually. Phone.
And if you're a patron, you also get merch sent to you after a few months of whatever it is on the tier that you're on. I think it's a mug here, sticker there. I forget. Anyways,
yeah, you get free stuff if you're a patron. Anyway,
all right.
We are kind of interested. Well, okay. Oh, God.
Before you get into that, I can do this. Okay. So speaking of merch, so to speak, or our Patreon, if you're watching this video on YouTube because you're a Harry Styles fan and you're new to our channel, well, on our Patreon and Patreon only, we have Harry Styles Carpool Karaoke with James Corden and Harry Styles, more importantly, performing live the Coachella Night 1 that we did a whole concert review, but those are hard blocked on YouTube. You'll never see it on YouTube, so if you want to see those performances, join our tier that's applicable to all of our video library, and you can see all of our blocked content, and Harry Styles is part of that blocked and unreleased content right now. We have a lot of unreleased stuff that's only available on Patreon. Okay, now this is a PayPal request from Sammy, one of our favorite dear supporters of our channel. This is a interview by a gentleman named Zane. Now, apparently Zane is a good interviewer, so I think we're going to finally see someone who's good at interviewing. Apparently Zane is good. So I'm excited for that because I'm tired of hosts that don't know how to interact with, like, don't know how to do their job. And that guy that we watched on the CBC program with Niall was great, of course, but
yeah,
the interviewer really irritated me. And so so anyways, Harry will be great, so that's not a problem. I want to see how Zane Lowe does. Okay, so here we go. Alrighty, let's see what. Oh, this is in promotion or an interview around the time of his second album's release, Fine Line. So this is that time about 2-3 years ago.
Yeah,
Harry Styles. He's 25 probably here, and he's talking about his new album, I guess.
Sweet.
Let's check it out.
Here we go.
Yeah. How's that for a?
Why did you connect with California? I mean, you could have gone to an airport and handpicked anywhere in the world and started to some degree again.
Right.
But you chose to come here.
For me, honestly, I think, like, so many of my close friends are here. People from London who've moved here for work and stuff like that. It's like, I'd say since I left home, I've never really had the place that feels like, oh, that's my home. I'd say my house in London is the most homely that I feel anywhere. Just because I've been there the longest. I've been there for like 6 years now. With like all the touring and stuff that we did in the band, I remember there was one point where we'd been away for so long that I came home to my house in England, and I was home for about 5 days, and I walked in the door and I sat down, and I was like, I don't know what to do, like, when I'm home at all. I'd been away for so long, I hadn't seen my friends for so long, I didn't know who was around. I was kind of like, who do I hang out with?
What is this strange reality? Yeah.
So there was a point, I guess, where I realized I was more comfortable being on the road.
So what'd you do after 5 days? Did you head back off again?
Yeah, and I was like happy to go.
I think it's actually understandable. I think there's something about that kind of gypsy lifestyle, which, in particular, the arts that make you travel, music and such, and the idea of having sort of a desire to be gypsy just by your very nature. They attract one another to some degree. I mean, were you always a little bit kind of adventurous as a kid? Were you looking further afield even when you were growing up?
I don't know if I was really. I had never been to London before I moved there, which is crazy to me to think about it now.
That is crazy.
You know, it's not that far away.
Where's she from originally?
It's like a 3-hour drive. But London was like where
that is weird.
The rich kids went.
Only be 3 hours away from London,
with their mum or something.
From Cheshire,
you know. But also everything about it felt like it was like, this is a new challenge. And if it takes me to London, then
That's weird.
The whole thing
Great.
seemed to me to just be a new challenge. It was crazy watching it kind of from a distance and
yeah.
watching what you and your friends were kind of going through and the whole thing. I mean, I suppose with the benefit of some wisdom and some age now looking back on it, you must even have a slightly different perspective than when it first ended in 2015. It's been 4 years and just kind of thinking what
2019.
happened.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy now because there'll be times where people will remind me of stuff that happened that I forgot about, and you like relive it all over again. And you're kind of like, oh yeah, that was cool too. You know, the first 2 years you don't even feel like you're working at all because you're just so happy to not be going to school, and it's like,
Wake me up.
I get to do this.
Yeah.
Great, okay. And you kind of go from also like, you know, when you're a kid and you see a T-shirt that you want and you like save up the exact amount.
Yeah.
But you'd have to account for like the postage and packaging, so you'd actually have to like save up for this amount. You know, you're kind of like doing this, and then you move to London and you work doing stuff that's fun, and you're like, can I buy this T-shirt? And someone's like, yeah, if you want. And you're like, okay. And that kind of feels like what life is like.
Yeah, then it just goes from T-shirt to flat, from flat to house to, if you know, you're lucky enough to have that kind of success. I mean, I'm interested to know 2 memories, and we're not going to stick around here for long because there's so much more to talk about. But while we're here, what was, now you've been away from that experience, what's the strongest prevailing memory you have before One Direction started? Like, what's the sharpest, most vivid memory you have in your mind before your life was
Before
tipped
it
upside
started,
down? Yeah,
right.
before everything changed. Because it was so sudden. I mean, it was over the course of, 10 weeks, and all of a sudden that's it. You're not going home again.
Yeah. I mean, probably like a birthday meal I had with some friends. I used to live next to a Chinese restaurant. And it was like my favorite restaurant. So I used to come home from school every day, and I'd get up to my bedroom, like open the window and stick my head out.
To smell it.
Woo! You know? And that was like where I went for my birthday meals.
What do Chinese people call
Oh no.
their food in China? Food. Okay. Hey, who wants to go for food? I love food! Okay, sorry. Do you hear that bird? I thought it was in my room. That scared the crap out of me.
I gotta say, what do you call Canadian food? Food.
Num nums. All right.
But I'd say
Oh, sorry.
probably the biggest stuff would probably be, there was a river, it's called the River Dane, where, you know, everyone would go down in the summer and you'd buy those little disposable barbecues that you used to take, and someone would be in charge of like buying sausages, and someone would have to buy the drinks. and
Tinfoil
like, bring
barbecues
stuff.
used to put on the
Yeah, and you
beach.
like put them on the floor, and then you try and squeeze like
Yeah.
somehow 12 sausages onto this like tiny thing.
Okay, what's the one prevailing memory you have today of that? Was it 4 years?
5.
5 years?
Yeah.
Even I
What's
knew
the
that.
one-
Five.
What's one
I would
that
say
really
five.
jumps out?
One of my favorite memories. I'll give you 2. The first one was when we'd just been formed as a band, there was like a picture of us that had been taken from when we were at the show, like someone's mum had taken it. And it was like the first picture of us, just the 5 of us. And we were staying at my stepdad's house. We were like living in this little bungalow, all of us together, to like practice, and we were just like singing songs, and basically just had a sleepover for like 4 days, and everyone drove down, and
Pillow
there's a
fight.
tiny little like newsagents down the street, and we'd heard this picture was being put in the paper, so we were like, oh, we're gonna be in the paper, like that's crazy. So the 5 of us like left this little bungalow and walked down to the newsagents and got the paper, and then came back and had breakfast, and we're all just like sitting staring at the paper and like passing around the paper, and we're like, let me see it again, let me see it again. And I don't know, I guess just because we just didn't know what was going to happen.
It's a timeless image. That's a timeless image.
We were so happy about it.
That first real piece of like recognition when you realize that it's not a controlled environment anymore. Like people that you don't know down the street can actually take a look at you or hear you. That's still, without a doubt, a life-changing moment for every artist I've ever spoken to.
Yeah, because it only happens one time too.
Oh, after that,
remember.
everything kind of changes.
Yeah, because we were watching X Factor at my family. We were at my cousin's house the day that my audition went on air, and we watched it and we're like, oh my god, that's crazy. And then we're driving home and we go to a petrol station to stop off and fill up. I'm in the petrol station and this guy goes, were you just on X Factor? And I was like, yes, I was.
With his curly little hair.
Yeah, I'd say that. And then the other one, I guess, once the band had really started, was we were in Sweden recording What Makes You Beautiful in the studio. Someone came up into the room and was like, there's 2 girls outside. And we were like, why? And they're like, they're like, looking for you. And we were all just like, but we're in Sweden, So that was like another.
It's super
the
innocent.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
That was kind of thing like, oh my God, that's so crazy. Like we're in Sweden. How,
Fast forward to the end of it, and you are out here a few months afterwards, and like that decompression leading into the writing of the first album, right? Leading into your self-titled album, that idea of having some independence for the first time, really to kind of do whatever you want. How did that feel?
Good questions.
Pretty amazing, actually.
He hasn't
I
mentioned
didn't really
himself
have
once.
a plan
Go
for like
figure.
when I wanted to make a record.
Good stuff.
I knew I wanted to start writing at some point, and that's kind of why I came out here. And I started with Kid Harpoon. So Sweet Creature was the first song we did. That was like in my first writing sessions when I kind of started like, because up until that point I'd done a lot of sessions with different people, and I tried to write with as many different people as possible. Just
Trying to
feel
remember
like,
Sweet Creature.
just to like learn. I just wanted to learn. It
Yeah,
was like
wait,
the
pause it.
best way I've ever heard.
A Sweet Creature, because I'm getting pretty familiar with his first album, but I'm not totally familiar with song titles, of course. So was that first or second album?
We've heard Sweet Creature. Okay, like the title
It
sounded.
is the first. Yeah, it's funny. I just don't hear it in my head.
It might have been when we
okay.
did like a bunch of songs together.
Was it part of his
It's a slower song.
the documentary? Oh, the documentary. I think it was when we saw the doc. I think
Yeah.
that, or the behind the scenes of the album.
Could have
being
been.
made is. Yeah. Okay. That's why. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Songwriting described as like, it's kind of like surfing in that you can practice getting up on the board as much as you want, and sometimes the wave just doesn't come. Or the wave comes, but you haven't practiced getting up on the board enough. Every now and again, you've practiced enough, and the wave comes, and that's when
You write that
the
song. That's when it comes
Yeah.
through. That's when the music,
So-
everything's in the right place.
So I kind of always wanted to be prepared to stand up on the board whenever the wave came.
Do you surf?
Not enough. I wish I surfed more. The waves out here are really intense. And I think the last time I surfed was here, and I got absolutely beaten up. I kept like flipping. It was terrible.
Beautiful
Yeah, I
property.
mean,
Is that his
it's a good look
property,
until you get in the
or-
water and you realize
Right.
that you're a little out of your depth, literally. How important was friendship to you when you started out as well? Because you were trying out with, like you say, you were trying lots of different songwriters, but I felt like when the album finally came out, you found a tight group of friends who were more than just collaborators.
I'd say, to finish the thought, when I'd been writing in the band, it was kind of like,
going back to
if
the-
I'd ever
the
written
original
stuff
question, that's good.
that was just with a friend or something, it was kind of like, well, I'm not going to release any music, but what would it sound like if I was to write a song that was for me?
Was that a contractual thing, or was it just a loyalty to
No.
the band thing?
Just didn't really want to.
Yeah.
And definitely didn't have time to.
Yeah, right.
But I knew that like maybe one day I'd want to do it, but I wasn't like, I can't wait to get out of this thing so I can go and make my own record.
Yeah.
You know?
So did the end of it creep
Okay,
up
pause
on
it.
you?
That's very telling, actually. This is a very good interview because he's saying here, we talked about how we thought and that we were projecting our own ideas and thoughts. We don't know what they're going through on stage or as friends in the band, so we didn't think. We have to keep in mind that we came into their journey already as established solo acts, right?
Yeah.
So seeing how good he is as a solo act, I assumed that he might be wanting out of One Direction, or when the One Direction ended, he's kind of like, finally, I can break free or I can be myself. So it's interesting how he answered that. He goes, no, he never considered it. He actually, at that time, he seemed to, if I'm mishearing him, but I think he's saying it. I mean, naturally, maybe it's crossed his mind, but he wasn't looking to be a solo act per se. Like,
Okay.
I kind of like this One Direction thing. I like where it's going, and granted, they were younger too, so that plays into it. I think again, though, I will argue that where they are now was still inevitable. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So I don't think he wanted or pushed for it per se, but at the same time, I don't think it had any other choice. But the universe doesn't keep these guys together for 25 years.
Yeah. It's interesting when you look at other bands where bands were formed by friends, where they've been friends forever. They got together. Those friendships are bonded, in the forges of friendship of like, stuff they've gone together. And I know that, the five of them went through some stuff together, but it's just some stuff. They didn't actually like go, let's pick each other and let's all get into this band together. Let's, you know what I mean? They weren't involved in that process as much. And so leaving that band is a pretty easy choice for some. Like, it would be hard to come back to it because they didn't choose it in the first place necessarily. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's why you're right about them not coming back together, unless it's just for like a promo thing. But even that, I have my doubts.
Yeah. I don't. I will say they will never, as a 5-piece, all 5 people together on the same stage performing One Direction songs, it would have to be some sort of like We Are the World type show.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, anyway.
A little bit. Well, I wouldn't say crept up. I guess the last year of it, we all kind of knew we were going to stop at the end of that year.
See?
So how do you know? I mean, it's this juggernaut. It's this non-stop.
Well, we would have we'd sit down and have conversations about like everyone good, everyone wants to keep going, and that kind of thing. And there was a part of me where I felt like all of the decisions I'd made as an adult that affected my life and what I was doing with my life had been made as a group. And I think there was a part of me that felt like I wanted to make some decisions for myself, where it was like, you never really had to make the decision because I could put my hat in the ring but still be like, oh, well, majority rules and I got outvoted. I felt like I need to make some decisions that just affect me.
Zane already did that, and he bounced out mid-tour, and I think it was pretty amazing you guys saw that tour through for fans. I think it was probably a wobbly 24 hours for people where they thought,
It was mid-tour when he
something.
came out. I didn't know that.
But looking back on it now, like, how challenging was that to complete that tour and to see that through, and how, how impactful was that decision for him to not see it through to the end?
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean,
hard-hitting question. There you go. All right.
I mean, it was hard, Part of it was kind of like we were sad, obviously, that someone had left, but also sad that he was not enjoying it so much that he had to leave. Because I think at the time, too, the tour and everything was going so well, and everyone had kind of got to this place where everyone was kind of living in a way where they, I think, felt pretty good while
Enjoy
touring.
it.
Yeah,
Enjoy it. Yeah.
It felt like everyone was kind of enjoying it. And I'd say a big part of it was us kind of being like, wow, we didn't realize he wasn't enjoying it that much, Obviously there was big
So I just want to say, Harry's answers to the questions, I guess I thought he'd be more political around that. You know what I mean? Like, I thought he'd not dance around it, but just kind of like be careful not to throw...
Zane's just got to do what Zane's got to do.
Just, that kind of response. And it sounds like he was very honest with that, like saying like like I just didn't realize that, you know, this was a problem until it was, you know, and that's a fair response without, you know, I wouldn't say any of that is him dancing around a big issue that he's, you know, got these, you know, knows all the details on the inside and was just pretending not to know. I honestly think what he said there was the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I also like you said, yeah, it was hard when he bailed. When he left the band for his own reasons.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. So there you go. Yeah.
Moments for us where we were like, what we do it, you know, because we were about to start recording a new album and stuff, and it was like, are we recording this without him? But I'd say in the moment, I guess the four of us became closer. Because we were like, okay, this is a hurdle that we weren't expecting. And I think you deal with this in many different places when you're with like traveling and touring, and it's a demanding thing, and not everyone likes doing it. But it's kind of like if someone's not enjoying it, you'd rather they don't do it.
That's why contracts are strange to me. Like, I understand there's a desire to do them when there's a lot of money involved, and in particular when there are certain businesses that really work, but in the arts and things that are creative, like I never understand keeping people against their will. Like, you're not going to get good work out of it.
I never get that with like the record deal stuff where it's like, why would you know, like when people like won't release people from contracts and stuff, it's like, why would you want a begrudged employee in the creative space? Like an artist,
it would have to hinder the creativity
when
if
they don't want to make it. It seems like completely counterproductive to me. But I mean,
you know,
I'm also not a businessman, so.
You're doing all right in that department, though, so you've got some good instincts. You know, you hire well.
I don't know if, maybe. I'd say my gut is the only thing that I do trust in terms of people.
That's really important, right? I mean, there's only two rules you should really live by, instinct and diligence, right? One gets you into the room. The second one makes you double check and make sure you should stay there.
I can also tell because the times where I've ever been like really, really upset by people is when I'm more upset with myself when I've got it wrong.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character. And that's the only time I feel myself get really upset with stuff like that, is where you're like, oh, I trust this person, or, you know, I feel like they're a good thing, and then it goes the other way, and you're kind of like, I got that wrong. Yeah. And then I end up like really bummed out about it for a while. But,
that's classic hard on yourself syndrome, to be honest with you, you know, taking other people's bullshittery and blaming yourself for it. That's therapy 101. Therapy 101. Have you tried that, therapy? I love it.
Yeah, I have, actually, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I think for a really long time, especially when I started coming to California, there was a big thing for me where I felt like everyone went to therapy.
They do.
Right, and I think for a long time I was like, I don't need that. You know, it's very like British way of looking at it, I think. And then I think there was a point where I kind of was trying to work out a lot more stuff about myself, because obviously then it was just me working.
On your own, yeah.
And I think it kind of comes with when you're trying to make music. It's so navel gazing. You're just like making an album. I feel like is the most self-indulgent time you can think of, really, because you're just like.
Oh, if you didn't have the opportunity to share it, if you didn't actually finish and share it with us, it would be narcissism of the most epic order.
Can you imagine you just make like an album to yourself and then you don't release it?
It's therapy, I suppose, in a weird way. But then we get the trade. That's what we get is we get the trade on it. We get all that kind of navel gazing, as you put it, and that self.
Sorry, I had some.
No, that's fine.
Fly killing to do.
It's a stupid joke. I was going to say it's like our channel. We do all this and nobody watches it. We're the most narcissistic YouTubers out there. And Nathan's gone. There he goes. Bye-bye, Nathan. Bye-bye.
Well,
see you later.
There goes my batteries.
What? You and your battery?
Yeah, me and my batteries. Me and my batteries. Hey, little battery. Just you and me now.
This is great. Well, here we are on YouTube. Well, you can keep playing the video while you're doing this. Nobody cares about our face, so just keep listening to the video.
I got a new battery ready to go.
Okay,
just
well,
hold on.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, look at all the people. They're so angry. Look at them.
No, inside they're seething.
See?
They're just being...
Done.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
Reflection
Right.
somehow forms this magic shape that we get to apply to our own lives, and then we become narcissistic because we say, well, Harry's speaking to me,
Right.
so I get to apply it to my
Right.
life, right?
But yeah, I think with the therapy thing, I just realized I was just getting in my own way. You know, it's been a thing where I've definitely felt it have an impact on my life, and something that I've kind of introduced some friends to who were going through stuff, and they were very skeptical about it.
I would assume you're a good friend, you're a loyal person.
Try to be.
Yeah. So who are some of your best friends? Who are the people that help you through these times, that are some of the people that you know really, that you're close to?
I'm pretty lucky actually with that stuff, because, and it's probably why I didn't go to therapy earlier, is because I have those friends where I'll have the same conversation that I would have with a therapist. I was at this talk thing where Alan de Botton was talking, and he was talking about how, like, real friendship is just built on vulnerability. The second you open up to someone with, like, a real thing is when you actually get to know someone. So I definitely got, if there was someone that I was friends with and I felt like, oh, I want to be, like, close to them, just open up really kind of straight away. And doing that has definitely caused me to become much closer with, like, just people, just all of my friends in general, I'd say.
How did you feel about when you started on this new album, right, on Fine Line? Had your opinion changed about your self-titled debut? Were there things that you felt in the heat of the moment, in the process of coming out of One Direction and making a solo record, that you would do differently, or that you felt that album didn't quite achieve?
When I, like, listen to the first album now, I can hear all of the places where I feel like I was playing it safe, because I just didn't want to get it wrong. I just didn't want to get it wrong.
You started with a mid-tempo 7-minute single, bro.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't that safe,
Yeah.
to be fair.
Yeah. Apart
Yeah,
from
it is a
that,
long song.
but I guess a big part of going into this album was I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about the whole process of, you make an album, and then you put it out, and you know, kind of release it, and then you tour it, and all of the bits that I didn't enjoy as much, I kind of went into the second one feeling like I want to work out how to make all of this feel really fun.
So that's why you drank margaritas and did mushrooms.
Yeah, I guess. I think it was
And
kind of
moved
like,
out to Malibu.
I had this moment where I was like, I would rather not do it than do it and it not be fun. Making this album was all about freedom.
Yeah, of
and
course, sounds it.
I had a big moment of, I guess, through the whole making of this record, I was kind of trying to redefine what success meant to me. For so long, especially in the band, it was like every album got bigger and every tour got bigger, and it was like always growing. And I think when I went to make the first record, it was kind of freeing, because I felt like, well, I don't have to do this anymore. You're still like, well, if the last band thing was this, and then your first thing is
everyone's
this,
lined
you're
up
still-
to judge. Everyone
you're-
is
right.
lined up to judge. Like, you come
Right.
out with that first album
Yeah.
and it doesn't smash it. It's like, oh, well, I guess out of the band, it's a no-go, right?
Right.
And so for me, when that album came out, I felt that you already were kind of redefining success in your own terms, because you went and connected with your audience, it felt to me at least, like in a very real way. Like you went back to trying to really connect with people. You can't connect in a baseball stadium.
Right. That was a thing that I'd always said I wanted
That's
to
a great
do.
point.
When we kind of started, and when we started doing the music, it was like, kind of said to my manager, like, the first tour that I do, I want it to be really small. And then I guess with this one, it was like, I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to have so much fun.
That's what success is. That's where you landed on the
Yeah, and
redefinition
I-
of success.
Yeah, and one of my friends kind of said, if you're happy doing what you're doing, then nobody can tell you you're not successful. I mean, it's so
Well,
obvious.
there you go, Nathan.
but
We're
It's
successful.
also the kind
Yep.
of thing
Well, there
where
you go.
probably 4 years ago, if someone had said that to me, I'd be like, okay.
Because you were too busy making everybody else happy.
And also, I guess, when I was in the band, there was a big thing of, because we would make, the last 3 records we made on the road, and I had friends who were musicians who I knew they would tour, and then they would take 6 months off to go and make
dive
the
into
record.
into a process.
And I used to be like, oh my God.
You can do that?
What, so you're just making, that's it? That's all you're doing.
You're
right
in
now.
room 1607.
You're just making
At the Marriott in Hong Kong, trying to nail
surrounded
a
by like
vocal.
4 mattresses and one over the top. Yeah, exactly. On the last 2 tours as well, we bought this like old surveillance van and converted it into a studio so it would follow the tour around. So like at the venue, you'd go into this tiny little surveillance van that had no air conditioning.
What, you and One Direction would go in the
Yeah.
back, we recorded songs in the
Yeah.
back of a van on the road.
So we had
That's
this.
the bossiest shit.
Yeah.
So people are walking past the van, they've got no idea.
Well, it'd be like in the venue.
In the venue, right, okay. Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's fun to record it like that. It's just a totally different process.
The album starts with Golden, which is like, you said before that vulnerability is the way to great friendship, and I feel like that song establishes that. I mean, there's a lot of like, I know you're scared, but man, I'm just gonna tell you the truth. I feel like that's what that song is about. It's
Yeah.
kind of, and it sets the stall out for the album too. It's a very personal album.
Golden, we wrote on day 2 of being in Shangri-La. That was kind of like, and immediately as soon as we'd done it, it was like, oh, this is track 1.
You knew it.
Right.
I love that feeling. It's one of the
'Cause-
best parts of making a record is making
Yeah,
the
it's
track
so
listing up as
good.
you go.
Because I always end up with track 1 and the last track, and
Right.
then you're like, okay, let's see what.
So you knew Fine Line would be the last track.
Yeah, as soon as we
Did you know
wrote
it was the album title as well?
No.
It's a great song too.
Such
by
a
the
powerful
way.
piece
Yeah.
of music. We can
Yeah.
skip to the
Thanks.
end if you want. That's like, that is one of
Yeah,
my
true.
favorite songs of the
Yeah.
year. I mean, that's a stunner, man.
Golden came really early, and then I used to drive from here to the studio and listen to it. And it's kind of like, as soon as we had it, Golden was like the perfect
Magic.
PCH song.
Magic.
You know, it's like driving down the coast. It was just, that is what the song is for. Like, it feels so Malibu to me, that song.
I heard that the first person you played the full album to was Liam Gallagher. Is that true? One of the first people.
Yeah, I guess by accident.
Who's Liam
I
Gallagher?
guess.
So what happened?
Well, he was
Oasis.
in,
Who's that?
Oasis
Oh,
singer-songwriter Oasis. It's funny. I'm not a big fan of Oasis. I'm a big maybe there's someone we can investigate. Maybe I feel like something about them rubbed me the wrong way back in the early days, 20-odd years ago. I just never.
are they those
Because
the ones that
the
might
brothers, they
as
always-
well be walking on the sun? Dun, dun, dun.
No, I
What
don't know
song-
about that. I know
oh.
a couple. You would know if you heard them. I know Louis is a big fan. In fact, I never said it before. There's
Oh, that's
you know,
Wonderwall. Okay.
Yeah. And this is, again, like, they could be friends with James Corden. They can have, it doesn't affect me and what I think of them. They can have their own fandom, right? They're going to have their own things that they enjoy that I don't have to enjoy. I don't like, I know that you guys are in our Discord, but when people are like, whatever they like, I like. Like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
they're a vegan. I shall now be a vegan. Like, okay, just relax. Like, they're their own people too, right? So all I'm saying is, that being said, Oasis, it's just not my... I don't know. I think it's their fighting. The brothers always fought, and that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth because they're like bickering and stuff. And it's just like, ugh.
Okay.
They seem very dramatic. Anyways, but I don't know. It's a side observation. But Liam Gallagher is Oasis.
Okay. All right.
we were working in a studio in London, and he was in, we were kind of trying to finish up, and he was in the studio next door. He came in at, I can't remember how it happened, but
you
he
had met
kind
him
of just
before. It was like
ended
it
up.
was the first time.
Yeah, it was the first time. He kind of just ended up in there listening, which was crazy. You know, I was a massive Oasis fan growing up. And then he invited us all over to go listen to his record, and we listened, and we all like had fish and chips and talked and stuff. And he's cool.
I'd imagine Watermelon Sugar would have been a standout for him. I don't know why. Just kind of feels like that's his vibe.
That was, I don't even know if we. Oh, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we played in that. But none of that stuff was finished. I don't think they had horns on it yet.
Right.
Lights Up, I don't think was written. Lights Up, Adore You, Treat People, and yeah, those three I think hadn't been done yet. They
What-
were all like the last week, basically.
Watermelon Sugar, which at this point is out, and you performed on SNL, and everyone's kind of figured out what it's about. The joys of, mutually appreciated oral pleasure.
Is that what it's about?
Is it?
I don't know.
That's what everyone's saying.
Oh.
Always good to
Crazy.
leave it open to
Oh,
interpretation.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
But it's something that just seems to kind of followed you around, that idea of you not just being a sex symbol, but that a lot of your music is inspired
So-
by this.
So uncomfortable.
Yeah, I reckon. But I actually wanted to ask you a genuinely serious question about that, because people throw it around like it's fodder, but it is actually awkward, right? Like, how do you feel sometimes when people seem very focused on you in that light?
In all honesty, I'd say I try and think about it as little as possible because it's a very strange, dynamic thing. It's also like a weird thing to think of about yourself.
Totally.
Like, I guess the thing with like sex in general is like, it used to feel so much more taboo for me to even like when we're in the band, like the thought of people thinking that I had sex was like, oh no, that's crazy. Like, what if they know? But it's like, you know?
Yeah.
So, even just like coming into this record, I wanted to feel a little less like guarded with stuff. I wanted to feel a lot freer and just more joyful.
That's what we said. The
and, like,
second album
honest
seemed
and-
like more like a party
I
album.
think a lot of the time with like,
Yeah.
when there's like tabloid stuff, for example, of like people breaking up and, you know, it's like, I think people forget that there's like a person who's also broken up with someone,
Yeah.
which is sad.
People too.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get
It's-
sad when you break up with someone.
Yeah. It feels to me, this album in part, and excuse me if
Interesting.
I'm being too personal, but based on the music, it feels like a breakup record in some respects. And it's one particular song, like it's a song called Cherry, which is crazy. I mean, cutting right to it, you know, with some real imagery of losing someone to someone else, and there still being that remnant of your relationship moving into a new space, which is right at the core of heartbreak. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like one of the most devastating images. If you're lucky enough to get your heart broken, that's one of the most devastating images you can go through. And you're also quite specific, you know, in terms of, it feels to me like it's quite specific in referencing the relationship you've been in.
Which
Yeah, and it's kind of like,
hang on,
I
hang
don't
on.
know.
it's a weird one for
don't
me
know.
because
So which relationship are they dancing around right now? Because that's, I don't know if
He's
they're
smiling.
going to
He's smiling in a way like, I think Harry's not gonna say the name, but they're all smiling.
Camille Rowe.
Camille Rowan, never heard of her. Who's that? Is she only popular because she dated Harry? Like, what's her deal?
Oh, she's the French model. Okay.
I'm googling her right now. She's a French American model.
Okay.
Whatever.
Victoria's Secret.
I
model.
can. I'm looking at her right now. Harry, you could do better. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just. I'm not gonna. Yeah, just first glance, I just think he could do better, and I guess he is. And I guess he would.
Okay.
But I'm sure she's a sweetheart. This is superficial. I understand what I'm saying here. I'm just saying, superficially looking at her, it's like, Harry, you got the pick of the litter regarding the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
All right.
So I'm always like, you know, I don't like to kind of explain songs or like kind of explain the meaning behind them and stuff like that. But I think with this record, it's so much more open
Yeah.
that it's like, but you've told us in the, like it tells you what it is, you know. I think a thing that I like about kind of definitely where this record went, especially compared to the last one, is like when I start making an album, I don't feel like, oh, I'm making an album that I'm going to put out in December of next year. Or it feels like I just start writing some songs and then, so then I can be as honest as possible. And then the time when you get to decide if you think it's too honest is when you're putting it out. And I never want to like trim that stuff down.
So you never thought for 1 second when you listen back to Cherry later on that we'd be having a conversation or other people would be listening to it, trying to decipher it and how that would make you feel. You felt you
Of
wanted
course,
to
he
be true
knows
to
they're
it.
gonna
I
wonder.
think I
who it
wanted
is.
to be true to it. I think
He's
the
gotta know.
moment that I wrote it, I wanted to be true to the moment that I wrote it and how I was feeling then. And
Sure.
the thing with the
How are
thing
you
with,
feeling then?
Not great. But I think also in the moment I felt like I was realizing some stuff about it was all part of like being more open and, you know, not being like, I don't care. It's like, no, like you get petty when, you know, when something's not going the way that you want. Like you get petty with that stuff. And I think there's something with Cherry where it's like, it's so pathetic, kind of, in a way. The night that I wrote it, we'd been writing for a few weeks and everyone had left the studio. It was me, Tyler, and Sammy, who's our engineer. And we were kind of sitting around talking at like 2 a.m. maybe. And I was saying that I was feeling a lot of pressure because the last record wasn't like a radio record. I felt like a lot of pressure to be making these like big songs. And I was like, I feel like this record has to be really big. So I feel like I need to make certain songs. You know, I have all these ideas about records that I want to make, and I want to make this record in 5 years, and I want to make this record in 10 years, and I want to make like just these ideas for records that I want to make. And we had this conversation, and Tyler just said to me, you just have to make the record that you want to make right now. That's it. There's no like, let me make sure this one's a commercial success so that I can make what I want later down the road. You just have to make the record that you want to make right now.
He's right.
So then we stayed up and wrote Cherry that night. So
you felt bad when you wrote it. How'd you feel when you finished it?
So good. Like I loved it so much.
That's an amazing
when I finished
song.
it.
Who's speaking at the end? What's the vocal at the end that cuts
That
in?
was my ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, so that's interesting, and I think it's
Same
super
girl?
cool that you left that in, obviously, from a sort of imagery point of view, because I love all that stuff. I love hearing things that revolve around music and aren't necessarily just tied to a structure. But the decision to keep, you know, your ex-girlfriend speaking at the end of the song is like so blunt and so straight up.
Interesting.
Like,
That kind of makes me want to go back to that song and just listen to it again and look at the lyrics a little bit more closely, just because I'm curious, you know, how all that connects together. Anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
what the was going through your mind? Like anyone else who's just broken up with someone right now is like, not on your wildest day would I do that.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I think it was like, because it got added in later on and it felt so part of the song. It just felt like it needed it. We're friends and stuff, so I asked her if it was okay, and she was okay with it. And,
What did you think of the song?
I think she liked it.
Come on, man, it's written about it. Right? You gotta love that.
I think she liked it. I don't know.
There's a song called Falling on the Record, which the first time I heard it was like everyone was just floored, and it's a real standout, and it's going to become something I think that people will carry with them irrespective of the context of the album. They'll zero in on that song as well in its own way, and Tom was telling me that came super fast.
I was going out for dinner, I think, and I was getting picked up from Tom's house, so he came to pick me up. And I was showering, and he was like playing on the piano, and as I came out of the shower, he was playing like the dun 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 dun. I went and stood next to him at the piano, just in a towel, and we just kind of wrote the whole thing. So it was really fast.
How long did it take?
I'd say Falling maybe took like probably 20 minutes.
What? I mean, that's 20 minutes in a towel. That's
Of course
real
it
friendship.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it did.
Yeah, right.
About 3 days.
He's like, okay, we finished it. Please go
you
put
can
some trousers on.
put some pants on or something.
Yeah.
That's one of those moments, right, where the surfing analogy, where the wave and the practice all comes together. Where do you think that came from, the subject matter, if it came so quick? What do you think you were saying in that song, listening back to it now?
I think it was like, for me, what I hadn't really experienced before was during the making of this record, the times when I felt good and I felt happy were like the happiest I've ever felt in my life. And the times when I felt sad was like the lowest I ever felt in my life. And I think it was kind of that feeling of when you can feel yourself kind of falling back into one of those moments where you're there. And the chorus says like, what am I now? Am I someone I don't want around? It was kind of like...
Yeah, it's powerful. It's super self-absorbed and self-indulgent in a sort of like self-hating kind of way.
Kind of. I guess it was a big moment where I was kind of asking myself like, who am I? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Kind of.
And there's imagery in there of being too drunk and wandering hands and all that stuff. That all the guilt points.
Yeah,
along
and just
the way.
like, I kind of started to feel like threads of you know, where I could see myself becoming someone that I didn't want to be. And that was really hard. But I think that the thing that's nice with that is you get to write a song about it and be like, okay, next, you know.
And who helps you at those moments? Does your mum still play a really important role? Your family? And by the way, you don't have to be you. There are people doing all kinds of things in all walks of life who are losing their way and need people to bring them back into line. So let's just talk about that relationship for a second, because I know family's a big thing for you.
I'm so lucky with my family. They've always just been really supportive, and it's kind of all you can ask for with like doing this. Is obviously, you know, sometimes you don't want to go home and be like, I'm miserable right now, because you want to be like, no, I'm fine, don't worry about me. And that happens too, but also have the relationship with my family where if I need to have that conversation, I can.
What's the best bit of advice your mum's given you?
The thing with my mum is she's less of like a soundbite of advice. She's like the kindest woman I know, you know? So for me, it's always been like just watching her, how she is with people and stuff is like, I just don't think she has like a bad bone, which is an incredible thing to grow up around. To have that person like supporting you is, it's amazing. She's the best.
Sweet.
She's like actually the best. So.
Who do you miss the most? Who do you wish was still around?
Probably my stepdad. Stepdad passed away a couple of years ago.
That's tough.
He was pretty great. He was like a pretty great guy.
Yeah. And what have you learned sort of going through life now as you're kind of experiencing loss? Because we all have to cross that bridge, and that's kind of sobering, and then that's when adulthood's really knocking on your door and you start to really take advantage of and reprioritize things. And, you know, coming out the other end of that really, really high-octane, visceral childhood that you had into your 20s and getting into your second album and being an independent human being who's got a strong relationship with your family, like, how have your priorities shifted, and what are the things that really come into focus for you now?
Friendships are probably just the most important thing to me. Like, the people who I'm really close with are just, I'd say, way more important to me than anything else. I've definitely felt a difference in the conversations that I have with friends. I guess since you, like, experience death more. When you're a kid and you lose a grandparent or something, and it's really sad, but also it's like, oh, grandparents are the people who die first.
There's some natural order to that.
Yeah, and I think, like, the first time you lose, like, a friend is when you really feel like an adult. You're kind of like, wow.
It's because it's one of the first experiences you have, I think, where you lose control, completely lose control.
You know, I think you have those moments where, and every single person does it who's ever lost a friend, where, you know, whether you're close to them or not, I think everyone has that thing of like, I wish I'd just asked one more time if they were okay, you know? And if there's any positive thing that could possibly come out of that, it's that now the conversations that I have with friends about that stuff is way different in terms of like, you know, you ask a friend if they're okay and it's like, yeah, I'm good. And you're like, I'm like more prepared to have that like, no, but, you know,
give me the real stuff.
Actually okay.
Give me the real stuff.
You know, and that's like their conversations that I have with my friends now.
And you're equally vulnerable in your own way. And you're able to give.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's like a really important thing. And that obviously, like I said earlier, is where like real friendship comes from. And I don't think everyone's lucky enough to have it, and I don't think it happens all the time. So
so interesting that, you know, you came out of this experience, which has left so many people isolated and fearful and paranoid and not wanting to connect with human spirit because they've had non-stop human spirit surrounding them for years, right? And you're like so different. It's like you just kind of called time on it and then just went searching for real human experience almost immediately. You know, you came to California in the search for people and for experience and for relationships.
I mean, the thing with my relationship with California is like, it's also definitely changed over the last few years. But when I first came here, it was like, oh, if you get to move here, it means you've made it. Like, you did good.
I mean,
you know?
to be fair,
Yeah, but this is my house. but
What do you
know,
say?
you get this like, it's everywhere you've seen in movies, and you're
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, it's amazing. Like you're in the mix, and you get to be.
I think he's saying like he thought, once you get out there, you've made it. But then Zane was like, to be fair, look where you live. Like,
Oh, okay. I missed what he was saying about where you live. Okay, my
Yeah.
bad. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the more time I spent here, I was like, oh no, actually, if you can come here and then leave, is when you feel really great. If you're like, oh yeah, that's amazing.
see you in 2 months.
See you in a bit. Yeah.
But that just goes back to what you were saying about, you strike me as being someone who's just restless.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with here is like I've never felt at home here in LA, which is,
Okay.
In one sense, not great, but at the same time, I always feel like I'm on
not his
holiday.
home, I guess.
when
You
I'm
know.
here.
Like,
Yeah.
That's fair.
So I really enjoy being here. A lot of my closest friends are here, which is where I usually feel the best, is when I can see those people.
So as this conversation comes to a natural end, as the sun goes down on our time together, what is London to you then, if that's the closest thing to home?
London's like just where I'll want to be at some point. And it's a weird one because after traveling so much, I don't look at the future as like, I'm going to live in this one place and then I'll never move anywhere. I think it's just about like being happy. I just want to be happy. And
And are you?
if I feel pretty good right now. Yeah.
You had fun making this album?
Yeah, so much fun.
What was the most fun memory of making this album?
I'd say probably my favorite memory from making this, one of at least, was the day we wrote Golden. We stopped and went to have dinner, and we were all sat in the kitchen at Shangri-La. And
Chinese
we
food.
kind of just played it like on one guitar, and everyone kind of singing it around the table. And it just felt really good. Like it felt so much more joyous than last time. And I think that makes sense because, like you said, the first single was a 7-minute piano ballad. So like it would have been weird to come out being really joyous. But
batteries died.
What? Who's
On the
yours?
lights.
You can
No.
keep going.
oh
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah,
I was
keep
gonna say
going.
they,
great.
Batteries died in the
And I
lights.
think part of the thing with like
they're
the
your
mushrooms
equipment.
thing for me is that I never do anything when
It's
I'm
great
working.
though. It's a great outro. It's
And-
almost like it's on purpose.
I don't even drink when I'm working
there you
if
go.
I'm
Oh,
touring.
they just
or
upped the
anything. I
ISO.
don't drink really at all.
Oh, I see. It's a cool shot.
And
Yeah.
when I was in the band, it was like, to me, it felt like it was so much bigger than any of us
Yeah.
that I kind of felt like I'm not going to be the one who fucks it up. So I was like, now is the time in my life when you probably go out and experiment and do this and you take this and you do that.
Because it's
and
on
that's-
your shoulders.
And that's what you do with your friends. And I was like, I'm not going to be the guy who messes it up. So I was like, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. Making this record felt like, I just felt so much more joyous. And I was with my friends and we were in Malibu.
Safe.
And it was like, yeah, I felt so safe. It was like, I want to take some mushrooms, I'm going to take some, like, now's the time to have fun. Like, we're in Malibu, 24. I'm also in music. I'm not like, do you know, it's like, you know, it's like I'm
You
not,
wouldn't be the first musician
not
to
like a-
experiment in that environment.
How
I'm
dare
not like
he.
a politician.
How dare
I don't think it's that crazy.
I don't think it's that crazy. It's definitely not crazy. What is the, do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I think my thing with drugs is like, if you're taking anything to escape or to try and hide from stuff, then you shouldn't even drink. And if you're taking anything to like have fun and be creative, then great. And I was with my friends and making an album you obviously get so in your head and you get so like self-conscious about everything, and you hit these bumps in the road where you're kind of thinking, is this good enough, and is it this enough, is it that enough? There's like an afterflow of some of that stuff where sometimes you take something and then for 10 days after you're like, don't worry about it, everything's gonna be fine. Like it's like kind of stress relieving in
Totally.
in a sense.
And that's where you're at now, I guess, in your life as you redefined success and you had fun making this album, is that you're just trying to worry less?
I think so, yeah. I think that's like been a big part of this whole thing for me, is like I'm just trying to go through life being a little less worried about stuff. Definitely with like working, because ultimately it'll be okay. It's like if you don't hit the top of the chart, your life doesn't change. Like I think realizing that, it's like if that was what I was aiming at and then it didn't happen, then I'd feel so much worse. But redefining it for me has been amazing, to be like, oh, but that's not the game I'm playing.
You did it.
There's a freedom with that. And
You know, you don't get to go out on arena tours with Jenny Lewis if you're trying to
Right.
play the game. You know?
she's so sick.
She's the best. You don't take Casey
know who
Musgraves
that
out
is.
Yeah.
before she won the Grammy if you're trying to like. These are bold moves. It's obvious how talented Casey and Jenny are, but you would be making a far more methodical, chart-based decision. You know, taking someone else out that would fill a different kind of void. You know what I mean? In the night.
Yeah.
Whereas it just strikes me that you're making decisions based on what's making you happy.
Especially with that stuff, because Casey, I just love her. Her coming on tour I was more thinking of like, who do I want to watch every night for like 30 shows?
Yeah.
You know?
And you were so dialed in. The timing was unbelievable because that album is so special.
Yeah.
And then eventually it's like the
'cause
whole
she was
world works it
She
out.
was booked before the album came out.
Which is nuts.
Because I just think she's so good.
Unbelievable. Her
And
voice.
I just want to watch people who are inspiring, and you just want to
Like
be
her.
around like good stuff. I'm just a massive fan of hers. So when she came out,
That's a good
it was
plug there
really
for her.
cool for me
Yeah.
that she was coming.
She
And then
loved it as
obviously
well.
the new album came out, and it was like, this is amazing. You know, same with, Leon came out last time.
And you got KP coming out in the UK.
yeah, she's coming out this time.
Jenny Lewis
Carla.
coming out in the US. It's all
Yeah.
dialed in, man. And this album is really, it's an amazing listen from beginning to end. Covers a lot of different ground, really revealing and in a really beautifully written. Some amazing lyrics in there that really kind of, I haven't heard people put it into context before. Songs like Falling, and we talked about Cherry and Fine Line, the more mellow moments, but also, even talking about, the Canyon song where, you're just putting into the idea of reflecting and reminiscing on a time when it was simple. And it's just really great, man. It's from beginning to end.
Thank you.
It's been good to connect and talk to you for the first time. I appreciate it.
It was fun.
What are you going to do for the Christmas break?
time,
I mean, you
right?
don't
Good
start
for
in earnest till next year, right?
I'll be doing something. Sure, probably. Christmas, I go home. I go to my mum's.
Yeah. Are you ready for next year, though? I mean, do you feel charged up about the touring
Yeah.
and everything else?
I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be. It's my favorite part.
Really, even more than...
I've completely fallen in love with being in the studio now because of like the freedom that comes with it. And I think also now I'm kind of learning a different way of doing it. I think I'd get like chunks in the studio. I'd book like a studio for 2 months, and then I'd go and I'd be in there every day because I felt like I'd kind of be like, well, we've booked it, so we have to be in there. And I think at some point, you've written everything that you have to write in the moment, and you realize you're not actually living because you've just been in the studio for 3 months. So I'm kind of working out still the balance of like, next time maybe I'll go in the studio for a couple weeks at a time while continuing to just kind of live.
Are you going to act again?
Yeah.
And he
on the
has.
I'd
horizon?
like to. I think for me, it's like with the
He's
acting
in a movie
thing,
now, I think.
like I never wanted to do it as like
It's making some
just
weird
doing
headlines.
it to like take a job. There was something about like the Dunkirk thing where when I heard about it, I was like, I want to be involved in that so bad. I just remember the way that it kind of hit me and where I was excited to watch it, like whether I was in it or not. I was like, I can't wait to see that. You know, if you get to make stuff that you're passionate about and you get to make something that makes you happy, then you're happy and no one can call you unsuccessful, which is great.
That's the redefinition of success, my man. Thanks for your time, bro.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's a much better interview than, again, Niall was great in his interview that we watched. It had nothing to do with him. But boy, talk about a different demeanor and conversation and driving the story of his career and the album and talking about the album he listened to. And he didn't mention once about his own personal career, his own personal like that. Remember that interview kept talking about? Remember when he kept ingratiating himself. There's nothing that from this guy. So great professional interview. So good job, Zane. So that's my reaction to Zane himself. I can't do a positive rant. This is a positive rant.
This is a
I get people go. Yep, there he goes again. I'm being positive. He's a good interviewer.
Who's saying this? Like I'm looking.
You're
I'm
doing
reading
this.
the chat. You're reading way too much into this.
Now I'm going to rant about.
Now you're ranting about my like not gushing over your rant.
No, I don't want you to. I don't want you to gush. Sorry, I apologize. I mistook your. I thought you were trying to move me along type motions.
Oh, no. I mean, I have a short attention span, so it doesn't matter who. It could be my favorite artist of all time, and I'd eventually start falling asleep listening to them. So it doesn't matter.
Oh, it's very calming.
Yeah, it's a calming, and like what I really liked about that interview was I like the venue. Like I love that it was outside. I don't know how many interviews I've seen where you're like in some studio and everybody's next to these giant mics and it's very like, I mean, that's what we do, obviously. If I could do this outside, I would. And the fact that they did it outside with the sunset going off in the background, I was just like, this is gorgeous. Like it would just.
Yeah. So we apologize if we weren't like bouncing off our chairs. It was a positive lull at the end there. It's like so gentle.
Yeah.
It's so nice.
I mean, and like it is. I don't know if this is a criticism. Some people will probably take this as a criticism. It's not supposed to be.
No, usually criticisms come from me, so you're fine.
Yeah. Okay. Here's Nathan's rant.
So, oh no.
It's not really rant. It's just that like you have to kind of look at every star with a grain of salt. And I've trained myself to do this. Doesn't matter who it is. I just kind of go like, you know what, like. When you've got lots and lots of money and you've got lots of like, you know, privilege and all the other things, then you can kind of paint this picture that sounds like everything's wonderful. And I know it's not. He's got stuff that he deals with and all this stuff. But like at the end of the day, he's just a person. Like, you know what I mean? We're all just people. And like, and so.
Of course, yes.
Like,
of course.
I think sometimes people get a little too like wrapped up. We've talked about this before about even artists that we really like, and some that I've even obsessed over when I was younger. As you get older, you still kind of go like, you know, do I need to know what Harry's favorite food is? You know, do I need to know?
I personally don't care
which side of he parts his hair on. That to me, that I don't know, that stuff kind of,
it's a different level of fandom. You and I, maybe it's our age too. Like we're late 40s.
Yeah,
I don't care. Like, and as much as I love Harry, I honestly would believe. I don't say this with like, look, I think I would have been a lot like Zane. I think my interview would have been like, I wouldn't be gushing. That's what I liked about it. It was just straightforward, not tough question. It was a couple good, you know, not softball questions type of questions, you know. Was it hard when Zane left? What was like? But I like his questions. What was your first memory before you? Like, what's a memory that stands out before you got big? Like, what's the last
time when you were free of the One Direction?
Like, what was your last human memory, essentially? I don't care about Harry's clothes, his food, his house, where he lives, his girlfriends. I could care less. I could care less about his love life. I don't care. I don't care about nothing like that. But I love watching him perform. I love his so I found his stories about the songwriting process more interesting than anything else. Like, and it was a little bit interesting to hear about, you know, the girl, and that was the behind the scenes stuff with the voicemail and stuff. So that was very
Right,
interesting.
right.
And yeah, so I agree with you. We don't fanboy over the ins and outs of what they do outside of the singing, so to speak. But
Okay.
some people do. That's fine. Great interview. Thank you, Sammy. And yeah, I mean, I feel bad because I don't know how to react to an interview per se, as much as just it's a watch along party, maybe.
Yeah,
But
it's a bit more of a watch along party because we're not reviewing or discussing any specific, you know,
even though I
content.
said like Zane is a reviewer, and I apologize. I mistook your. I guess what I thought I saw you doing was there. Oh, there goes right. Yep, there he is. Yeah.
No, that's
And I was
funny.
trying to be. I was
You're
trying to be
funny.
positive. He's positive. This is a positive rant that he was a great interviewer, and.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
now
a
that-
little
now-
bit too subdued. A little bit too subdued. If it's my only criticism, you know, he could have been a little bit more animated, but complete professional. Didn't try to say, "Hey, Harry, I'm a part of your life now, right? Am I?" But interesting enough, we actually have a second interview by Zane and Harry that we're going to watch later, not today, another day, regarding the third album. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Generally, I don't mind just sitting down and listening. I'm just
Yeah, we enjoyed that. Thank you, Sammy, so much.
harder for me to gush. I guess that's where I was trying to go with it.
No, we don't have to gush because that's not.
It's
how we
easier
do
for me to
things.
gush around music than it is about a person, if that makes
Right.
sense. Yeah.
No,
Anyway.
we weren't gushing. We were being.
All right.
Well.
Okay, cool. All right.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in Discord today and what have yous. And
we'll see you in the next one.
Welp, here we are on YouTube.